I'm very excited. We're finally into the top 8 section, and I was getting a little worried because the hair product said a 12-hour hold, and we're getting kind of close to it here. So I am joined by Thrilling. Thrilling has been an integral part of organizing the Wild Hunt tournament. Of course, there's no control and a lot of people behind the scenes, but Thrilling has been pulling a lot of the strings in the, behind the scenes, making sure that everything runs as smoothly as it does. Thrilling, how are you liking the tournament so far? How do you see this, unfolding in front of your eyes?
It is fantastic. It's much better than I could have ever imagined, and it's amazing to be here. And thank you guys all for watching, and yeah.
And yeah, so that's, everybody out there watching the tournament must be enjoying themselves. We're finally at the nitty-gritty, the meat of the meal here. It is the top 8, and this one is DrGrrrr versus Amon Amarth456, both of which the 4th and 5th seed went 5-1. So we had to cut a lot of people. 5-1 is the bottom, as Shu mentioned. Mr. 9, as we're gonna call him now, unfortunately. So we're gonna go straight to it. Thrilling. Any words of wisdom before we kick it to the game?
Take it away.
Take it away. Let's go to the games.
All right, so we are getting ready for the quarterfinal matchup to start off here. It looks like the players are just finalizing their decks, and here we go. The top 8 is officially underway.
Usurper, huh? Look at that.
Yeah, the Usurper is a spicy one. I don't believe we've seen it on stream yet, but this deck has definitely performed well for him, as he has obviously qualified for the top 8. What are you thinking about this matchup? Dagon versus what appears to be Usurper Alchemy.
Alchemy is actually pretty decent against Dagon. You can often clear out some of their Death Wish units with the Viper Witchers. And if you do that, then you kind of can brick a lot of cards like the Griffin, the Cyclops, just make things a little bit difficult for them.
I definitely agree. And look at this aggressive play here. Slave Driver into immediately developing carryover, possibly helping to alleviate some of the potential problems of having to go first. And potentially, if he winds up losing the round, this should disable the Dry Pass. But we do see the K-Ran over in DrGrrrr's hand, which is very good at taking care of 7 strength units.
Yeah, that's right, and it's lining up perfectly. But DrGrrrr electing to wait on that, I think he's not really in a rush to take that out just yet, at least not until some units get lined up for the beers to go down.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I don't think there's any particular rush. It's pretty much always going to be there for him, and I don't think we were in any sort of situation where Amon was going to take an early pass here. So this muzzle is pretty powerful. It's already generated 14 points, and every turn it's going to get a little bit better.
Yeah, we see DrGrrrr now. It looks like he was okay, but now in a little bit of a sticky situation here, as he pretty much gave the initiative to Amon Amarth to stay ahead here and possibly go for a decent pass going up a card into the second round.
Yeah, muzzle tends to have that effect, right? Particularly when played early and the board's not really developed yet. That massive tempo swing you get from just jamming it there, it's very powerful.
So I wonder what that Royal Decree is going to be used on here. We see the deck list from Amon Amarth, Caretaker, Muzzle, we just saw, and Wispus Tribute, along with Brewis Ritual.
Yeah, so it looks like Caretaker is going to be the target for the Royal Decree, am I correct?
It could be. I don't know what he particularly wants to pull from that Alchemy list. I mean, Viper Witches are bad, Novices are bad, Slave Drivers are alright, but it just pulls you some of those more bad cards, right?
Yeah, oftentimes in this sort of matchup, what you're hoping to hit with your Caretaker is actually something that the Slave Driver created out of your deck, so it's basically playing extra copies with the 4 strength body attached. And we're seeing a very early and aggressive Mandrake here, hoping that DrGrrrr only has the 1 Dow and sort of disabling some of his triggers.
And we do see exactly that. I mean, looking at the hand, there's no other Death Wish besides that Rot Fiend in there, which is more removal, which is oftentimes harder to get going than just those proactive like Dows and other Death Wish units like the Larrys there.
Yeah, definitely. That was a big play in this round. That sort of cripples DrGrrrr's hand a little bit. And notably, if DrGrrrr wants the Fog to take down the Barbergazi by itself, he's going to have to hang in this round for quite a bit longer, at least 3 more turns. Do you think that's the plan? Or maybe he's just start looking to some other ways?
I mean, even that is quite easy to block. I mean, you just play some units on the front. As long as that Barbergazi is, at 1 strength, you're not going to get ahead unless you have your own Barbergazi, which is what he elects to do there.
Yeah, and his would have been at full strength had it survived. But honestly, I don't think DrGrrrr was too hopeful about that surviving. It's pretty rare playing against the Viper Witcher deck that you're going to get a mid-strength unit with a lot of utility like that to stick.
Yes, oftentimes against the Alchemy, you just have to hope that they don't have them in hand, as they're always going to have strong removal. You just have to hope that they don't have it at the time they need it.
And here comes the first ale. So the deck's starting to get a little bit thin. We're seeing the Swears here. What do you think he's trying to hit with the Swears, even if this isn't necessarily the best matchup for a card like that?
To be honest, something like Great Swords might be decent, even though you put them in the graveyard, but you often see people mulliganing like Priestesses and their Revives until round 3. That could be decent for it. Also, Henselt, too, is a great matchup for that Swears. You
Yeah, it's probably very good in that matchup,
put any
right?
machines right into the graveyard and try and brick that Henselt.
So where do you go from here for your DrGrrrr? This is starting to look like passing territory. I mean, the 3-strength Barbagazi is still alive, but you're down a lot of points.
Yeah, I think you want to try and get rid of that any way that you can. There's no real clean way to do it, but there we go. It is
There it goes.
done.
The Fog did its work after the Rot Fiend trigger there, and it looks like we may see the Swears here. It's probably not going to be great. This way he gets to play it, still be ahead, and save his more powerful plays for later.
And honestly, this matchup here is one of tempo, to be honest. Especially since it's pretty coin flip dependent with Alchemy, you really need to be able to stay ahead and put pressure on your opponent's deck in order to retain some of that card advantage. And same thing with the Dagon on the other side, trying to pressure with that damage over time effect, slowly just put you in a situation where you can never regain those cards.
Yeah, I completely agree here. Tempo sort of is the name of the game. And as you can see, Amon has done a great job of putting pressure on DrGrrrr. Even though DrGrrrr started off in this advantageous position, getting to go second, the heat is really on now, and he's going to need some real points to make up the difference.
It'd be interesting to see if he has to burn his Trial of the Grasses in this first round here. It looks like he's sitting pretty comfortably ahead, but DrGrrrr does have some pretty powerful plays. He can use that Royal Decree, find a nice gold, and try and push ahead.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice K-Ran there. Just getting him ahead and counting for the Death Wish trigger that just went off. And yeah, the Radovid looks like it might be good in a lot of spots, but it's just not good on this board.
Just pulling the ice here, wanting to get solid value, not really willing to risk anything with that Philavandrel. I think he's in an okay spot here, down a card, but he is up quite a bit of points. He probably will be able to find a decent pass at least, if not get out of this round with the win.
Yeah, I agree. I think that play was just about the raw points. He was just looking for value, as you stated there. And is this going to be slizzard into... continuing to develop some carryover. He's tried before. This one looks like it's pretty likely to stick, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure how big of an impact this is. If Amon Amarth just passes here, then he'll the blocking the dry pass won't really matter too much. But
easy runestone into lock there, negating that issue if it was going to come up at all. Yeah, now he's basically forced to pass. One thing I'd like to mention while we are sort of in between the rounds here, that the entire top 8 will be played in the best of 5 format. It's going to function exactly as it did in the Swiss, except for each player has registered an additional deck list, and we will be playing best of 5.
Here off the top there, that is a pretty solid draw, I think.
Yeah, this is looking pretty good. Amon being in control here, he just really has to decide how long he wants this round to go. You played Alchemy today. What do you do in this position?
I'm a big fan of bleeding here. I think if you have good cards that can carry you in round 3, especially a short one like that Kahir, like that Trial of the Grasses, I think you want to leverage that in a really short round, as the points will be more meaningful.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Do you think, particularly the Kahir, see, the Kahir is basically very low risk. The Trial of Grasses, on the other hand, he's going to have to get a target to stick to the board, right? And I believe we've only seen a 1 Cyclops out of DrGrrrr, so there's definitely some risk there.
Yeah, I think if you bring that into the 3rd round with some way to get a Viper Witcher, it's a little easier to have it go off just because your opponent's going first, and that way they have less cards to keep in their hand to react to that.
Definitely. I like that idea a lot.
But it is a big risk, though. That's no doubt.
So what is the ritual going to be pulling here? Is that going to be on double Archospore? Because I think the only Dow that we've seen, that wound up...
That was banished, yeah.
Yeah, that got banished, right?
Yeah, there is the Rot Fiend in the deck, I do believe.
That is
although
true.
That will be a pretty poor draw here, just most likely 8 points.
Yeah, Rot Fiend is not how you want to start off a round. We do have the Griffin. It's interesting that he has the Frightener in his hand. Do you think you want to Frightener first to potentially get the most information, or do you want to maybe not risk drawing your last gold card so that Royal Decree can be potentially bricked?
I don't mind it. I think drawing the gold is pretty low chances, 1 out of 8. And it's good to definitely kind of kick that over to Alchemy, which is a very reactive deck. you might make some of their cards, like a Viper Witcher, worse if they can't, do it on a reactive way.
Yeah, I think that's really well put. As we're seeing here, now DrGrrr's up a card, but this is a big point disparity. The Kier coming in on iced, I can't say I've seen that one before.
Yeah, and that Beastmaster is just solid points again. Super safe, super easy to set up. No worries.
It's also helping out playing right into Alchemy's game plan, developing a couple of more small bodies to the board.
Now the Vader Maker here could be used to set up a fog, pulling out. There is only one foglet in the list. Oh.
Yep, so there goes another foglet that's about to hit the board here, and it's already generated 10 points of value with 3 more turns to go. Unless anything unfortunate happens for the Dagon player, it is going to generate more value than if the Alzur's Thunder version was used. So I do like this play here. It's setting up some damage over time. This round's not super long, but I still think it's making the most of the tools he has available.
Here we go. Looks like he could pull a beer or try and chain those ointments a little bit into some stronger things. The Beastmaster actually coming in pretty clutch here as a good revive target as well.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that implication earlier, but it looks very, very powerful here. There's not a large target for a Viper Witcher to take down, so just multiple bodies, another 12 points on the board. It's looking pretty good here.
Again, important to note is that the Trial of the Grasses is still dead. He will have to pull a Viper Witcher with this or deal 10 damage to one of his units and get less of a buff. Is there any way for DrGrrrr to deal with this here? I don't think there's any easy way.
Yeah, it depends on what the caretaker targets look like, because the Griffin isn't going to have any impact in regards to the Trial of the Grasses. And honestly, even if there was, we are looking at a gigantic 35-point gap here.
That's right. Even with maybe killing the Viper Witcher possibly, I don't think it would be enough.
Yeah, Kahira is one of those cards that when you get to a final round situation on even cards, it can just single-handedly carry you to a win. And it looks like that's what's going on here. DrGrrr's just not going to have enough, and I think he's starting to realize that here. I think Game 1's going to Amon and Amarth.
And that's part of the reason why just finding that Mandrake is so important. I mean, we've seen Mandrake kind of hugely popular today at the tournament. I think people are trying to counter that Alchemy Nilfgaard and, again, also get good value against lots of other decks as well with that Mandrake.
I agree. I think Mandrake's at an all-time high, and there we go. That is the first game of the quarterfinals. That's going to Amon Amarth, takes the victory, puts the first points up on the board.
Pretty decisively, I might add. I mean, that score gap was pretty big in the last round there.
That did not look particularly close at the end of the game there.
And that, I think, again, is just the power of bleeding. You get in control of that round, you force your opponent's cards out, keep your best cards for round 3, and just set yourself up in a winning position.
It certainly worked out there, and bleeding is one of the more important tools and concepts that you can use to help yourself succeed in Gwent. So
it takes a lot of skills, too. You have to be very aware of the possibilities in the opponent's hands. It's easy for us to see both the hands, but
yes,
when you're sitting
the game
at that
is much
table,
easier
it's a
to
lot
play
harder.
when you get to see both hands, right?
That's right. It's a lot harder when you have to kind of make reads and almost make guesses. I think he'll have this. I think he won't have this.
Correct. So what do you think here? If DrGrrrr thought that the Dagon deck was the proper opener against his opponent's entire lineup, does Alchemy being removed sort of change that dynamic? Do you think the Dagon list is going to come back, or do you expect him to switch to something else?
Honestly, I think the Dagon list is pretty solid against the field. You could try and play a game of information here where you switch to maybe a lesser-known deck, one that you haven't seen too much, or that you think your opponent hasn't seen too much. But you're going to have to get a win with that Dagon eventually. He already knows what's in the list.
That is the plan. And by playing the Dagon list again, you are giving your opponent effectively less information about what your other decks contain.
Right.
DrGrrrr here decides to go with Crack on Crate, potentially because now he knows the Alchemy's gone, so this deck becomes a lot more powerful once those powerful Viper Witchers that can remove such large units are off the table.
And Amon Amarth almost certainly going to be looking for some golds here. Hits 2 of them off the mulligan. That is what you like to see there.
Yeah, that is a fortunate couple of mulligans. And it looks like the hand is all right. For Amon Amarth here, one of the interesting things is, well, yeah, he's got the Malorn for access to the Dow. This hand sort of does a little bit of everything. I'm liking it.
That's right. And even if you do end up getting some of your Death Wishes removed, you do have that Wispus Tribute there to pull them from the graveyard, possibly.
And what is that spicy card we see up in DrGrrr's hand? That's a Phoenix being played in Skellige. That is not something you see every day.
I mean, there must be an Akvis somewhere in that list. I can't imagine anything else you'd want to run that on.
Yeah, it's that card, it feels almost as if it's not really a neutral because you only see it pop up in monster decks so frequently. But it does look like other factions are able to make use of the card. I'm excited to see it come down here.
I mean, I'm happy because that premium art is just amazing, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it's one of the best looking cards in the game.
Did you know the baby chicken in the belly? Did you know about that?
I did not. I'm gonna have to
take a look
inspect
next
that
time
a
you're in the
little.
collection. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
So here we're going to see the Dow come down. He's looking to go for this rather than develop another Larry the Archosaur, likely because this play immediately puts him ahead on points with the Fog and that. And it's interesting when you're playing the Dagon Deathwish decks, it's really all about finding a spot to get that Dow down because it's low tempo to get the payoff later.
Yeah, and winning the coin flip is huge for that. It just allows you to, go down in points and not worry because you can still get out of the round in a favorable spot.
So it looks like, once again, we're seeing the Dow get banished. People are just not letting that thing survive today. They're not having it. They've seen too much of Dagon running around doing whatever it wants, and this is very effective here. Those Griffins go from 17-point cards to, at best, 13, and look, there's smaller units on the board that might just soak up that Deathwish hit.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about the power of Mandrake against the Alchemy list, but again, a lot of lists can find good value with that Mandrake. Deathwish banishing those Dows, even Skeletal, they have their mulligan guys that you can reset and kind of wipe off the board for good value. And speaking of Akvis, there he is on the board there. It starts ticking down his timer.
There it goes, coming down at a strong 10 points right off the Kraken crate. This is pretty exciting, definitely not something you see every day. And the Dagon deck is going to have a little bit of trouble trying to remove this, right? Right now, it looks like that Cyclops doesn't have anything big enough to chuck at the Dragon.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Amon Amarth, you're really not feeling good about having to commit 2 Cyclopses just to hit that Akvist. You're probably hoping that one of the Larrys, cooperates and maybe hits some of his strength over there.
I think
but again,
that's exactly what you're hoping
it is
for.
a big risk to take.
I do think if one of the Larry the Archosaurs don't come through and hit that Akvist, this round's been put on a timer. I cannot see Amon Amarth letting that thing go off.
Yeah, I mean, a pass is also decently reasonable. Like we said, he did win the flip, so he would be passing 1 card up. Not really a bad situation. I don't know how good his hand would fare, though, in maybe a round where he's getting bled or maybe a shorter round.
Yeah, this is exactly a type of hand that can get sort of awkward if you start getting bled. Particularly, the Slizzard doesn't exactly have the Dow that you're really looking for. Then your Cyclopses aren't great. Do you want to start committing golds? This could cause some very awkward sequencing later on if indeed he has to pass. And right now, that Akvist is still sitting at a healthy 10.
Now, what are the chances you think that he's plucking that Akvist out of the graveyard with his Caretaker? I mean, that does take a bit of foresight there.
Well, I think the chances go way up if he wins the round, right? Akvist is a card that's much better when you're dictating the pace of the round. Like, I don't think you could make a play like that in a round 2 after losing round 1, but I'm definitely rooting for it. And would that entirely brick the Phoenix?
I think it would. We can take a look at the deck list here and take a look. But yeah, not really much in Skellige in the way of Draconids, unfortunately. Maybe that'll be in the next expansion.
Skellige, the dragon card game. So it looks like we're getting some Larry Deathwishes going off over here. And Amon's got this nice little 12-point lead, but that Akvist is about to go off. Look at that.
So he took the risk there and he missed it. I mean, it was pretty low odds considering the amount of units on the board. And the payoff, if he misses, is really bad.
Yeah, it was a very high-risk, high-reward type play. That's the first time I've seen an Akvist go off in quite some time here. And even though it won't be able to trigger again because it's now exhausted, I think is still the terminology they use, you're looking at an 18-point Phoenix, which is pretty reasonable.
Yeah, it just sets himself up to either get out of this round with 2-card advantage and a loss or winning on even. Both are extremely good.
So what sort of cursed package do we have that could potentially come off of this Skjal if that comes into play?
I do think Olaf is in the list here, which could be definitely his finisher along with the Phoenix. Just pulling the Phoenix on the Akvist is a solid 18 points. So that's not bad as well, even though the Akvist is exhausted. And again, that's just the base strength buffing. We see Mandrake having a really powerful effect on the meta with the kind of removal of base strength. And the opposite, Skellige being able to buff base strength is super powerful.
That's a really good point because you're effectively getting 2 to 3 times that bonus when you're able to bring the same unit back, something that Skellige truly excels at. Mandrake has been one of the most impressive cards of the tournament for me. I haven't really seen it be bad, and when it's good, wow, is it good.
And we see here Amon Amarth taking the initiative. He's going to need to stay ahead on points here to at least get out of this round in a decent scenario.
Yes.
Slizzard, I'm pretty sure that is pretty dead right now, unless one of the Larrys has been sacked by a Cyclops.
Yeah, I do believe he threw one, correct? So it's not completely dead at this point.
But then you're making your
You're making your Weavis dead, yeah. So
Weavis, sorry.
No, that is Brewis. You were right. You were right. I always mix the Crones up. But yeah, exactly. You're sort of competing. Oh, he goes for the Cyclops play. This is very interesting because this is going to unbrick the Brewis and not have that problem that I think we were about to both start talking about, right? Of trying to, have too many resurrects going on. And look at this. It's going to work.
I mean, the good thing about the Cyclops is it's really good tempo. You can set yourself up for a good pass here, which is what he does end up doing. Taking that round one card down
I like that
worst.
line a lot. It was interesting to see him just play straight through the Ocfist. He decided early on he was going to take the risk. He was going to rock right through it. And, things didn't pan out his way, but he stayed the course and got the round.
So we see that Diao here in the hand. That will be a decent draw if he can find a Griffin. But other than that, not too great.
Yeah, the Death Wish units, particularly the Dao, is just so unimpressive by itself. But when used in concert with other cards, it's very powerful. Do you expect to see it mulliganed here in case we don't have a good hit off of it? Or do you think he's going to keep it for the synergy?
I think it really depends what his next draw is here in the third round. We do see a Slizzard, so he can pull Death Wish synergy. Also, again, with that Brewis, I believe. I already forgot.
Yeah, that one's Brewis.
But he's got ways to get Death Wish. I don't think he's too worried about that. I think he just needs something like that, which will be a lot better for him.
Wow, what a draw from DrGrrrr here. This is a really, really powerful hand. That's a pile of high-value cards. Not a ton of interaction going on, but DrGrrrr is going to slam a lot of points. I wonder if Amon can keep up.
So Amon Amarth does decide to keep that Dao. I suppose he wants to find a Griffin with the Slizzard there.
Yeah, that seems to be the line he's going to take.
But DrGrrr's hand looking really strong as well. 20-point Olaf, 22-point Siri Nova coming down. That will be tough to overcome.
So this is interesting. It looks like the Udalryk is the only cursed unit in the deck for the Scowl to potentially hit. So he's going to be throwing 8 points his opponent's way. Now, that being said, this is, going to give him the last say instead. But looking at Amon Amarth's hand, last say's not worth a whole lot since he doesn't have a ton of ways to really interact with either the Olaf or the Nova.
I mean, yeah, if you're DrGrrrr, you're not really sure of the list, but I think Geralt Igni isn't really common. Things like Scorch aren't really common, so not too much to worry about there. But 8-point Spies are really not bad at all. I mean, you'll take that any day of the week.
Yeah, it's certainly a good deal. So what do we have going on here? He's inspecting the graveyard, it looks like. Whew.
Is able to pull back a Longship, it looks like. That is pretty good.
That is not bad. I mean, this is just a pile of points here. I mean, the Larrys are going off, but the Longship is helping to mitigate that, effectively halving the damage over time he'll be taking every turn. And here comes that Griffin. This is just a straight-up race here, it looks like, and it got very close.
Well, the Olaf here will be able to close the gap as well as the Siri Nova. I think it's going to depend how big this Ozrul gets. There is a Spy Frightener in the graveyard, right? So that's 18?
Yeah, I mean, that's looking really good here. Ozrel is a very, very powerful card now that Spies stay in the graveyard, and whew, I was sort of
the 14 bear,
at 14
though.
strength bear. I was sort of counting Amon out over here, but it's looking real good now.
I think it was the residual damage of those Larrys, too. I mean, getting that out right away, having those ping. Those will be the few points here that will end up making the difference. Look at that.
There we go. Nova just will not be enough. Amon Amarth taking a massive 2-0 lead here, putting DrGrrrr at match point. All he's got to do is win one more game. That was a super interesting round. I was almost counting the Dagon player out there. Guess I got to believe in the Larrys more.
Yeah, I think the Deathwish Dagon actually kind of unsurprisingly, or maybe on the low, has a lot of really strong point plays that they can get out there. I mean, that Brewis, again, pulling 2 Deathwish, those layers will add up really well.
Yeah, I totally agree here. So, all right, match point. What do? Do you just go to your best deck if you're DrGrrrr here and think, this is my list, this is the deck I'm the most comfortable with? Or do you take the other approach saying, let me try and get my bad matchups out of the way first? How would you approach this if you're sitting in DrGrrr's seat?
I think I would do it on matchups, just pick something that I think is most favored against there, kind of get some momentum going. I mean, once you start getting the gears turning, you start feeling a little bit better about yourself.
Definitely.
And the comeback ends up looking a lot less daunting when you're only down 2 games.
Yeah,
or 1 game
is not a
two.
great look right now.
That's right.
And it looks like going with Old Reliable Dagon against the full test list. And this is not a standard size deck here, is it?
No, this is quite the thick deck, as one might say. Spotting also another thick card, Hubert Rek, of course.
Yeah, that's a big one. 40 cards, not enough for full test anymore. They got to get that 41st card in there. That's what really makes it turn.
So we see all the golds in the hand. I mean, that's pretty much going to happen every time you run a 40-card deck, right? Find all your
obviously
golds.
you'll have 0 bricks and 4 golds in your 41-card deck. That's how math works.
It's just the laws of Gwent, boys.
So, yeah, I mean, this hand is looking quite good. The blue coin, so maybe to help balance things out a little bit. And how is DrGrrr's hand looking? Not bad at all either.
Yeah, that sheet troll there is actually pretty spicy. We haven't seen that so far, but that'll be able to pull some Death Wish out, activate it right away for a good amount of tempo, and get it into the graveyard for things like Slizzards and the Brewis as well.
And I think Rot Fiend, in my opinion, one of the least impressive Death Wish units. If it's going to shine anywhere, I think it's going to shine in a matchup like this that's going to flood the board and just get a lot of units down. I think the usage of Rot Fiend is going to play a big role here.
That's true, and round 1 is going to be where you want it. You don't want to risk carrying that into a short round 3 or 2. He will be able to pull the second one out of his deck with that Sheet Troll and the one in hand as well.
I completely agree, and to your point, that issue gets even worse if you're forced to go first or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. Again, it's a reactive card, and we see those kind of being sometimes tricky to play on certain scenarios like going first. You really want to see where your opponent's kind of stacking their cards so you can match that with the Rot Fiend on the other side of the row.
So the K-Ran's coming down here to deny the Blue Stripe Scout. This is basically to stop the Reaver Hunter, the Reaver Scout, rather, from pulling additional copies of units that are already in play. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I like that. I mean, Northern Realms 30 cards decks, they're not really running anything that's too crazy in terms of value over time. So just kind of making certain draws a little bit worse because they're not buffed up by that Temerian, whatever his name is good, I think.
I definitely agree here. I really like that play as well, and it's going to work out here. So we're just seeing sort of a pure value battering ram come down here. I think this is mostly just putting points on the table. What do we think about this Dow here without any real great activators in his hand?
Yeah, there's not much he can do right now. He could possibly Frighten her to try and find it. I don't think that's necessarily a good play, though. You just set yourself in a really big hole without much of a catch-up mechanic besides that Siri Nova, which you'd like to save for round 3.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the Frightener play here. I think a play worth considering is dropping another source of fog from the Vader Maker here. You are playing against an abnormally large deck, so the chances that they have any one individual card is much lower than if they were playing a 25-card deck, so you can afford to sort of use that information to your advantage here.
I wouldn't mind maybe trying to set up some of the carryover. I mean, you can do it with tempo. If you eat something like that Dow or the Rot Fiend, you can try and squeak out of this round and set yourself up a little bit better for the next round.
I think that's the direction DrGrrrr has decided to go here. It looks like the Monster's Nest is going to be used for a Barbagazi, or you could just play the Barbagazi from hand, I suppose. I imagine that's where this line is leading us.
I mean, it's nice that you have 2 tries at it, right?
Yes.
I mean, there is definitely removal possible in Northern Realms, things like Margarita, things like Death Mold.
And we do see that Vader Maker there that does have the Owlzer's Thunder mode on it.
There you go. Death Mold Doppelganger right there is what I would say.
So I don't think we're overcoming this gap in one card very often. I think if you're in DrGrrr's seat, you're probably planning on playing 2 cards and going down a card to win this round from this position. What do you think?
Right. I think this is okay to be in. With the Fog, you can pass him with Siri Nova. You know, if Amon Amarth would elect for a pass there, maybe thinking he's safe. But you just always want to be within striking distance. But for DrGrrrr, I'm not so sure that he's really able or wanting to win this round just because of how much he'll have to commit to it. So maybe possibly just trying to get Amon Amarth to throw out some cards that he might want to hold on to while trying to look for a good exit might be the strategy here.
So what do you think about the potential? If DrGrrr's thinking pass, how do you feel about the sort of the round 1 spy when you're already far behind? We've seen an almost abnormal amount of this today. What are your thoughts on this? I was talking with McBeard and Swim a little bit earlier about this.
Yeah, you know, I personally don't like it. I think a lot of times players are kind of tuned in and they see that spy, they see a certain point value in terms of a gap, and they're just passing right away. A lot of these people, you know, they see these decks over and over. They know about what their ceiling is in one turn.
Correct.
So I think that's really not advised. And also, too, you always want to keep that as kind of insurance just for round 2, because Spy round 2 is just really good, right? Everyone's going to hold on to that.
It can be very, very powerful. And here we see the Barbagazi coming down, making some carryover. The Owl's Stone is going to hit it, but it's just a little bit too big. And in this spot, a 3-strength carryover unit has largely the same functionality as a 6-strength one, right?
Yeah, I mean, really, you're just looking to block the drive pass is the most important thing. You have your Spy in hand, so you can counter if Amon Amarth has his Spy, and you're in a pretty good situation to go into round 3 up a card, which is definitely good with that Siri Nova in hand.
So by continuing to play here, you risk maybe something like a battering ram coming down, but DrGrrrr is having none of it. He's developing even more carryover. He is dead set on this plan, and he's also closing the gap slowly.
Yeah, again, doing it with a bit of tempo, like I said, with those Barbagazis. You might as well cash in on those Death Wish units while you have them, I'd guess. And again, possibly trying to force some good cards out of Amon Amarth.
I would agree here, and it does look like the Siege Master is going to come down, heal, and reactivate the Battering Ram to take one of the carryover units off the board. When do we have to start thinking about passing? I don't think we're committing the Siri Nova to this round.
Yeah, I wonder when Amon Amarth might start thinking about passing as well. I mean, we see Bloody Baron and DrGrrrr in his hand, again, both cards that are kind of finisher.
I would agree with you. I think he's very happy to see the pass there. Otherwise, he was going to have to start making some really difficult decisions about his resource usage on cards that he really wants to save till later in the game.
Right, right. I think the Bloody Baron might be okay to toss, but DrGrrrr you definitely want to hold on to there. And we see some pretty good draws from Amon Amarth. Again, not really bricking at all.
That is a big one. This is a lot of points in Amon Amarth's hand.
Yeah, so we're going to look for Amon Amarth to try and get rid of those Temerian soldiers before he places DrGrrrr. He doesn't want to accidentally roll into that and then brick 2 cards in his hand effectively.
I completely agree. I think you just almost have to sequence it that way, and that's potentially one of the reasons that we've been holding on to the Reconnaissance in this hand. Do you think... What do you think about playing it in this round for potential tempo to try and force your opponent to commit multiple cards, or do you like saving the infantrymen for round 3?
I mean, I think they're really good as a finisher, but again, you end up with problems in your hand the longer you hold on to those with that and the DrGrrrr. And even the Reconnaissance, I mean, you can definitely low roll pretty hard on that. So I don't mind just tossing them out here as tempo. You may even end up getting that card advantage back just from the tempo there.
Yeah, definitely a good point there. And we see a Ballista coming in. This sort of seems just like burning off a card to me, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, just the nature of bleeding. You want to get rid of your bad cards and hold on to your good ones for round 3.
So do you think DrGrrrr is going to look to be mulliganing that Frightener or potentially get it down, sort of force out the pass from his opponent? Which I don't think that works out favorably here because I think Amon Amarth is perfectly fine passing with this particular 3-card hand.
Right. Well, he's got some advantages to throwing down the Frightener. You kind of set a big unit into the graveyard for that Ozrul to eat up there. Also, you can kind of maybe force the pass earlier than Amon Amarth would want to. You know, just because, again, he wants to dump some cards out of his hand in round 2 from the looks of it.
Here they come. There are those infantrymen. A solid 21-point bronze in this list. The deck's starting to look like a real Gwent deck with only 18 cards left. So that DJ is, he is not really controlled yet. But there's the potential for, what's the guy that eats all the buffs from the deck?
Hubert.
Hubert, yes.
Hubert's
probably going to be quite large if he makes an appearance.
We'll have to see. He does have the Owl's double cross there, so that will be pulling the Hubert. So kind of 2 tries at it.
That's a very good point there.
And we see DrGrrrr here having to burn one of his golds.
And this is in an effort to try and keep up here, I would imagine. Also, there's no way of knowing that Amon Amarth is likely going to pass here. He does not know what's in his opponent's hand. Look at this.
He could just be smelling blood in the water here. I mean, this is pretty ballsy.
This is an aggressive line here. The Ballista's coming down. This is a nice little gap here. I think what we're seeing is him try to force this Siri Nova out of his opponent's hand.
I mean, you will have to commit it here in the next few turns. You have that Frightener sitting in the hand. I don't think he wants to end up playing that, but you'll have to commit both of your finishers possibly here.
Yeah, that's potentially the way this is going to go. I'm really curious to see the way that DrGrrrr approaches this situation here. Has there been a spy to hit either of the graveyards yet? Or is that Ozgrel not really fully powered at the moment?
I think there's no spy yet. I'm pretty sure the full test list does not have one. And again, that's kind of a good reason to play the spy, but you could just be setting yourself way too far behind where you can't catch up here.
Yeah, it's interesting, especially with this double frost ticking here. Playing a spy, staying around no longer really favors DrGrrrr.
And here we go, the pass
There's
from
the
Amon.
pass.
That is a good one. I think he knows that the Siri Nova or something will have to come down in order to take it in one. And I don't even think that will be enough either.
He is going to gain 6 points effectively from the weather because the Dow is going to go to the graveyard, triggering its Death Wish and making 2 of the lesser Dows. So that's at least a temporary little boon here.
So he's getting +6, and then the Nova is 22?
Yeah, that's not going to be good enough. Or is it?
By 1 point.
NA
with the
math,
fog.
my bad, guys. That was impressive there. Everything about that was impressive except for my math.
And that just goes to show you how good DrGrrrr is. I mean, he calculated that really quick, found out it was enough when it's not necessarily the simplest thing.
It is.
Now, this is interesting. Do you mulligan the Bloody Baron? Because you will get the buffs from the Hubert.
I had not considered that. That is really interesting.
But it does play further into something like a Scorch or a Mandrake.
Yes,
Which I think he did see from DrGrrrr. He did see the Mandrake,
and
right?
look, this extra card here isn't even doing that much because one of the cards is effectively going to be 6 strength. Now, that does power up this Griffin here, but
So this
I
is
don't
definitely
know.
the safer play.
Yes. I like taking the safer line here. And how big are we? We're 22.
I don't think it's enough because he pulled the Spy.
We need, yeah, this is just going to do it here. It looks like DrGrrrr is going to be able to extend the series. All he needs is 14 for the tie, 15 for the win. And the Frightener is dead. There
Wow,
we go.
by 4 points.
DrGrrrr.
Back in it, boys.
Fighting
This is the
off
series.
elimination. Goes to good old Reliable.
This
Brings
is
the
the
Larrys
series.
back.
So there we see a huge decision there, keeping that Bloody Baron in hand when he effectively did have the buff with the Hubert.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder if that potentially costs the game there. I suppose it depends on what type of top deck you're looking
top deck
at
is
and
important.
how many more, how many other cards in your list you have that aren't particularly powerful, right?
Right. Like I said, we do know that the Dagon does run Mandrake, I believe.
Yeah,
So that could
it
be
look-
kind of a lose condition if you decide to kind of kick that Bloody Baron and put all your points in that one Hubert basket.
I agree here. And as we've seen so far, now DrGrrrr has a lot of information about exactly what type of deck he's playing against. And let's see what he chooses here. How do you like going with Henselt against Voltest?
You know, the Hensel I think is really, really solid. We've seen kind of people just dominate with that deck today. I think it is super good, especially if you're on the red coin.
Yeah, it is certainly a red coin deck, and let's see. This hand not nearly as powerful from
And there it
Amarth
is.
over here.
You know, the great thing about the Hensel really is the light cavalries. Being able to leverage kind of some lower tempo plays. I really kind of like that, despite the fact that it is sort of a coin flippy card.
Yeah, what's not great about Light Cav? Tell me more.
But oftentimes you can carry them into round 3 and not worry about, you know, losing out to a Nova
Yes.
finisher because you have those light cavalry to
100%,
kind of
and they will generate
dampen
the
that
points
blow.
for you then. Do you think this is one of those times? Is he potentially considering something like Muzzle to try and deny the Reaver stats again? It looks like he chose not to go that way.
It looks like a bad muzzle, but honestly, there's not too much that you really want to muzzle in this kind of 40-card Northern Realms deck. Not that I could think of that wouldn't be too weird anyways.
Yeah, so where are we going from here? Now, these are 5s. We only have 1 crewman on the board, so Battering Rams aren't going to be able to take them down right now. What's your direction? You played Henselt today. Let me know. What are your thoughts from this perspective?
You know, I honestly don't mind the winch. Just finding something solid like a reinforced trebuchet or a siege tower is fine. You know, he could also try and Natalis into something if he wants to keep tempo. But again, you do kind of want to leverage getting those light cavalries out.
Yeah, it's interesting. The Scorch is going to be pretty much a block for the entirety of the round due to the Ronvid being there. And in a different circumstance, you might say the Scorch is going to be safe for the Hubert. But what we're seeing here that's very different than the other Henselt decks we've seen today, this is going the more traditional route, running Villain Trenton Mirth for another Scorch finisher.
Right, so we have seen some Bloody Baron lists. Those play a little bit differently. You have to worry about killing units. you have to worry about kind of setting that up, playing around Scorches and things like that. But this Henselt list is the one that does the Scorching, so I think he's just trying to get into a favorable round 3 with some sort of card advantage and leverage that Bork, which will be pretty good against things like Hubert, Bloody Baron, those types of cards that he has already seen.
Yeah, and are you seeing any way in the full test deck to effectively handle the villain Trenton Mirth, or that might just stick once it comes down?
Yeah, sometimes they do run things like Margarita. I think he'd probably have to combo it over 2 turns if you want to get rid of it. Something like Death Mold in the Thunder, followed up by a Ram. But there's really not too many clean ways for the full test to get rid of that Bork.
Yeah, I completely agree, and we're seeing the namesake of the deck, Full Test, come down here, get a decent little buff. He's got a nice little pile of units on his side of the board. It's one of those cards you kind of want to try and fit in when you can, because it's not always going to be the highest tempo of plays.
Now, Amon Amarth does have a little bit of a tough job here. He does want to play around those cavalries if he can, at least carrying them to later rounds, possibly bricking DrGrrr's hands, costing him mulligans. But the full test list does run a ton of muster units, and those can put out tempo pretty quickly.
Yeah, they really can, and we're starting to see, I don't know if you want to call it the swarm effect of it, but it's starting to add up here. It looks like we have, do we still have one more Blue Stripe Scout in the deck?
There should be, I believe.
Maybe it's just been destroyed. I'm not 100% sure on that. And yeah, I mean, the Henselt machines are just coming down and sort of putting a beating on the multiple units provided by the full test player. I'm struggling to see how Amon Amarth is not going to lose this round on even. What would your plan be here if you were in his shoes?
I mean, another consideration too is trying to target certain types of machines from the Henselt. I mean, if you can kill those, get those off the board, kind of make that Henselt dead, I think that is a good way.
There we go. That's the pass.
Yeah, he does get the pass there.
This is a very, very favorable situation for DrGrrrr. I mean, we can go on and on about every reason why it's good. He's still got the light cav in the deck. He still has his most powerful play in Henselt for a large amount of tempo available. He won around on even cards. What's not to like about the spot?
I mean, the one thing he is missing is the Spy here. That is kind of the big bow on top of that present that he would like to send over to Amon Amarth.
Yeah, that's 100% true. That's going to make it a little bit more difficult for him to sort of leverage the fact that he won round 1 on even cards. He has the potential for a dry pass here. Do you expect to see that in this situation?
I mean, I think bleeding is really good with the Bork. You just want to set that up, although the card advantage is great as well. Yeah, I mean, I'm always a fan of the bleeding, so
yeah, we noticed. You like your round 2s long and aggressive. So yeah, I mean, taking the card here, it's sort of... He's in a good spot either way. It's right. Which spot does he think is going to give him the highest % chance to win, neither of the positions being bad.
The dry pass is actually pretty good because, you know, if you're Henselt, how do you open that round up? You don't really have any good plays. Everything's pretty reactive.
That is true. It's a very reactive style of deck.
You know, kicking the can over to Amon Amarth's side is pretty good in giving you some more options on what to do.
So I assume we're going to be looking to Henselt if we're in DrGrrr's shoes. The Siege Master, that's going to be the target we're looking ahead here?
Yeah, I think that's the only one of his bronzes that he still has 2 in deck of. We did see 1 Ballista and Battering Ram, I believe.
And it looks like the muzzle might come down now just for a pure value play. I'm assuming there's not really any engine pieces you're looking to steal, although there's the potential to hit maybe a Siege Master, get an additional crewman on your side of the board later.
Right. I don't think you're in any particular rush to do it now. I mean, both these are kind of bad. You could get a Siege Master, which is slightly better, you know, deny the crewman, but again, I don't think it gets any worse if you hold on to it here, so I might mind holding it.
Yeah, I agree. These units just aren't going to be growing to 9. There's no real way to get it there. You're going to have one sort of whenever you want. I think the only reason to do so would be if that's really your only play that sort of makes sense with the board state. And maybe that's what he's thinking here, because none of the Battering Rams are particularly good at this moment. There was no small units to sort of kill and take advantage of. The Death Mold didn't look great there, so that might just be a sequencing thing.
Ooh, giving DrGrrrr a pretty decent scorch here. He would scorch his own unit, but still up 21 points from that. He did hover over it there. He's thinking about it.
He's thinking about it because, once again, I think the ability to freely sort of scorch away any board that you want, since you're sitting on the villain Trenton Mirth that has the exact same effect attached to pretty large dragon body, it's a really freeing thing. You don't just have to save your scorch for the Hubert anymore.
Yeah, and again, it is definitely possible to get that Scorch kind of bricked in a way. You know, maybe you play down like you're Bill and Trettenmirth, and that's kind of blocking you from doing that.
Correct.
But look at this. He ends up getting an even more favorable Scorch, 28 now.
Yeah, it's starting to look real juicy. Yeah.
How greedy do you want to get with this here? How greedy?
Decent face. I want to get exactly this amount of greedy. I am taking this Scorch and going home.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely get more value, but again, do you really need that much more value? You're sitting in a pretty favorable spot here.
Yeah, also something like the battering ram here, you're going to have to hit one of those 7s, right?
That's right. You will have to hit that. So that's really surprising. Why do you think he might not want to go for the Scorch there?
Maybe he's trying to convince his opponent that he doesn't have a Scorch. And here we go. We're sort of looking at the same choice. The light calves are coming out now.
That could be it. The light cavalries. There
yeah,
you go.
That's potentially what he was playing towards here. The 8 free points are nice. Effectively, one of them is just going to die in the frost, so its presence really isn't going to make itself known.
You have to pull the trigger now.
You have to pull the trigger on the Scorch, I think.
Another thing is he could be thinking, okay, I've seen Bloody Baron, I've seen Hubert. Those are 2 huge bodies that I need to take care of.
That's very
right?
fair, and he did watch his opponent last round sort of play around the Scorch by playing the Bloody Baron and the Hubert as 2 separate cards instead of mulliganing there, right? So maybe that's sort of the reason, but do you really think that the Bloody Baron's going to be more than 28?
I mean, this is what makes Gwent so great, right? Is these mind games here that you can play.
It's one player's thinking on this level. Ooh, this is interesting. A lot of ballista value being acquired here. It was certainly a strong machine. I don't know what the second Scorch is really going to be going for now.
Yeah, I mean, again, like, worst comes to worst, he can just use that Scorch on the Hubert.
Yeah,
just
and the board could just come down
towards
and
the
say
7s,
gold,
yeah.
right?
Because he can't Scorch himself, so I think he does have some options still, even with the holding the Scorch later on.
I imagine we're going to have to see the Henselt relatively soon, right?
Yeah, you want to get down that Siege Master first. I think that's what you want to pull. He could just play down the Ballista. Like, that is a lot of value there with those 5s lining up.
Yeah, I mean, the side effect of not scorching away all those units is you have a ton of points. You have a ton of points on your opponent's side of the board that you can then bring down with something like Ballista.
Right. So maybe ending up working out in the end, you get that Ballista value, you hedge your bets kind of against the Bloody Baron Hubert combo, and you ultimately are pretty happy.
Yeah, and Amon and Amarth's Ballista is no joke here either. They're just trading Ballista shots, both looking to be very effective here. Here comes the Henselt. Let's see if that's enough to close the gap here.
Honestly, the healing here is actually a pretty big factor too. He does get the Ballista on the 2s, but then can just swap over, heal his battering ram a little bit, get some value there.
I agree. I think that's, it's basically just free points in the bank, right?
Yeah, exactly. So one more shot here. I don't think he wants to ping the 7s, yeah, and he decides not to. He has Scorch, he has Bork in hand.
I like this play a lot.
I mean, he could, as far as DrGrrrr knows, he could not have Bloody Baron or Hubert.
Yeah, here's the thing, though. If you Scorch here, your Bork won't go off, and if you Bork here, then you can't Scorch for a while?
Well, you have to Bork, I think. You could even...
I think so, too.
You could even just play it once the Bloody Baron or the Hubert comes down, Scorch, and then let Bork go off naturally on the 7. That's fine as well. And that looks like what he will be doing here. And this is, again, why Henselt and card advantage is huge.
Yep, and that's the end of that one. DrGrrrr coming back from a 2-0 deficit, ties the series. Our first quarterfinal is going into Game 5 here.
It's never over until it's over, Joe.
Never over until it's over. So let's see, can this 40-card full test deck get a win here? It looks like Amarth was just cruising right along until he hit this deck list, and that's part of this format. You have to get a win with all of your decks. Your lineup is only as strong as its weakest link.
Yeah, and the big thing with the 40-card full test, too, I mean, we haven't really seen a Amarth brick yet at all, which is
true.
Certainly highly possible with the 40-card full test.
Yes, yes it is.
If he's not winning, even when the deck is really going, well for him, so to say, it could be, maybe a weak link in the deck list, I think.
I would agree. If I'm him, I'm seriously starting to doubt this deck list here. And let's see. It looks like the crack on Crete is coming back. Do you have any insight into how this matchup plays out?
So we do know that the Ocfus is in deck. He will have a lot of units just from the swarming nature of the full test, Amon Amarth that is. And also, maybe not the best ways to deal with that Ocfus. We saw DrGrrrr elect to pull it out with the crack in that last game. So coming out at a 10, I believe, puts out of range like the Vader Maker, puts it out of range of a lot of these machine hits that might come down. and also with the Bone Talisman to heal it as well.
I completely agree. It looks like we have some red coin full test action going on here. This is, once again, no bricks. This is a pretty reasonable spot to be in. It looks like he has the potential to double weather his opponent, and if his opponent tries to get cute by removing one of those blue striped scouts from the field, he's ready for it. He's got all three in his hand.
The thing that looks a little weird here is the Battle Maiden right now. I mean, it's kind of not really having much of a choice to pull. We do see the light longship, but you might want to get that out with the Pirate Captain. It depends. It's going to be tricky to navigate here, I think. He's going to have to be careful with those cards.
Yeah, I think the sequencing is going to play a huge role here. I think he's thinking about maybe pulling the trigger on the Grimmist. That might be a little aggressive considering the prevalence of Reaver Scouts in decks like this.
Right. You know they're going to be running 3 of those Aretuza Mages, so I think I like holding on to that until there's at least 2 weathers.
Yeah, I completely agree with that here. And meanwhile, the Skellige player is going to start to accrue a little bit of value. Once he gets a second ship rolling, if he chooses to go that route, then DrGrrrr will sort of be equaling this first Frost here.
How scared of you of this ship here? I mean, is this something where you want to just remove it right away? We know that Skellige does have reses, so that can be a bit of a futile effort sometimes.
Yeah, it's interesting. It sort of depends on how long you want to take this round. You might not want to enable something like Freya from your opponent. And look at this. If the Octopus goes off, besides the card here, isn't Octopus just an insane card against the deck that goes as wide as Full Test?
You know, Octopus definitely is good in that scenario. I wouldn't really mind too much Amon Amarth just passing, you know. I don't think he's seen the Phoenix yet, so as far as he knows, you know, just getting this Octopus out of the way and not having to deal with it is pretty good.
Yeah, I think the Phoenix actually did come down in round 3 of the other game on the 13 strength Octopus, but there it is again. 13 strength Octopus, that thing is big, and he might not be able to handle it.
Yeah, and again, DrGrrrr is kind of creeping ahead in tempo, only 3 points down here. You know, he's got the Frost ticking on his side, but he's got the ship there, getting that back.
Oh, she's getting a little extra FaceTime here on the stream.
I left my sunglasses, man. You should have told me I was going to be up here.
The sunglasses definitely added a whole new dimension to your match.
Oh, man.
That was pretty good.
As we're getting derailed now from
that.
the cast.
So back to the game over here. This Octopus, do you think he's going to let it go off and sort of try and just play through it again? This is a very similar situation to last time, right? We had Amon Amarth on a red coin, and he took a shot at killing the Octopus. It didn't work, and he sort of just played right through it. Do you expect the same approach here?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would rather bank on him not having the Phoenix than being able to heal that Octopus back up.
Ooh, and
DrGrrrr is just going to play it safe here, healed, I think. There's no reason to risk it.
Yeah, I don't think there's a reason to risk it unless he's really trying to get him, right? Because the Octopus would go off before the weather, if that's what he was setting up for, because it looks like he has the Vader Maker in hand, which does 9, but I believe the Octopus would go off in return before the Frost would have killed it.
I mean, the Octopus is going to give you a ton of value just on points and to give you that card back. I think you want that going off no matter what, really.
Yeah, he's in a very good position now. That Octopus has been very, very impressive, and I think it's the first one we've seen all day on stream. Nice. Thanks, guys. Check out my beard. Everything good there? So, yeah, Octopus went off and effectively reversed the coin toss while providing value. When Octopus goes off, it's one of the more powerful effects in the game.
I'm sorry, Joe. My mind is a blank now from those little images.
That's all right.
I can't concentrate anymore.
Look at this. He's just coming back down for more. The Octopus just gets slammed down on the board as a generic 13. This is going to enable the Phoenix to go off later. This is starting to look real good. Are we thinking reverse sweep maybe?
And now Amon has to play the tempo game here, you know, kind of reversing the coin flip with that Octopus. He's going to have to stay ahead or risk going down multiple cards.
Yep. This situation started to get really, really dicey here. That being said, there's not a ton of cards I see DrGrrrr really wanting to commit to this round. The Hymn is probably the most reasonable, or the Damoon Pirate.
The Hymn could even be good just pulling a Spy possibly with Skjal. So he might want to hold that on to round 2, but getting just like a Spy with, you know, as 4 points is really not that bad either. Yeah,
it's certainly a nice option to have available. And it looks like Siege Master is going to come down, reactivate the Ballista's deploy ability. I mean, Amon Amarth's ahead here, but not by a lot. That 12-point gap is definitely closable.
Yeah, the nice thing about his hand right now is he's got multiple things that could be finishers. I mean, those Temerian Infantrymen, 21 points is pretty solid.
It is.
You know, kind of like a Bronze Siri Nova. That ADC pulling the Hubert is going to be a lot of value for sure.
Yeah, I suppose if he wants, he can almost always sort of just end the round with the ADC, right?
Yeah, he could dump a few of these cards and still have pretty good short rounds coming up.
And it looks like the Spy is coming down here from DrGrrrr. So this is the second attempt at gaining card advantage by DrGrrrr in the round. I'm not so sure that this one's going to work, but looks good to me. I really like this play here.
I mean, this puts Amarth in a really tough position, right?
Yes.
You play into it, you're probably going down 2 cards, but if you're passing here, I mean, you know the Nova's in his list, you know Skellige can put out points very quickly.
There you go. I mean, what do you have to do to stop DrGrrrr here? I mean, you won the coin toss, you're going second, and you're going to end the round down 2 cards. That was a really impressive showing from DrGrrrr.
Again, he does have some strong options, the Hubert Wreck and the Temerian Infantryman in hand. He will have to dodge his mulligans here, which he does fairly well.
Yeah, it looks like that was okay, although this hand's not incredibly... It's got 2 powerful cards and 2 okay cards here, right?
Right. So he's going to elect for the open pass, get that card advantage back a little bit, you know, do what he can to kind of get even on those cards.
So we're going into the final round of this quarterfinal opening match. 1 round will decide it all. DrGrrr's going to be up a whole card. Got to say, I'm liking those odds.
And this is a big draw here with the Mandrake as well. That will be able to destroy Hubert.
Yeah, that's
no matter how
effectively neutralizing
big
the biggest finisher, isn't it?
Yeah, and you get last say on it, which is just gorgeous as well.
Mandrake continuing to perform. It's just been insane all day.
Yeah, I mean, that card is just killing the meta right now, really shaping it in lots of interesting ways, and I'm loving it, man.
Yeah, it is. It's cool to see flexible and sweet silver like that getting so much value here. So we're just leading off, standard 12-point play, but plays like that are often going to be fine. Ah, nice, guys, nice. Look, check this out. See, you did make top 8.
Oh, yeah.
So we've got the Frost come down over here. This is going to provide, like, a reasonable amount of value. We're having fun now, guys.
DrGrrrr will not be too happy watching that VOD later.
Or maybe very happy, who knows?
Maybe.
So what do you think the sequencing looks like here? The Skellige players just got a pile of points in their hand.
I'm sorry, what? I was
still thinking about the implications
a
of
little
your action
flustered after
there.
that kiss, yeah.
So it looks like the Restore is going to come down, start generating value. This play is good in and of itself. It's going to generate another point every turn, help to mitigate the Frost damage that's coming in. We're looking at even cards, 23-point lead here, only taking 1 a turn. This is looking good.
Yeah, I mean, DrGrrrr is looking great here. He's got a beefy Olaf, a beefy Siri Nova. Even that Phoenix is pretty beefy with the Octus being buffed up.
Yeah, I'm surprised how effective it's been, aren't you?
Yeah, it's really cool, and just goes to show, if you're creative with your decks and you find a strategy that maybe is a little bit unheard of, you can really catch people off guard and really just get a lot of mileage out of that.
I totally agree. It's something we've seen all throughout the tournament today. Look at this gap here. We're talking 32 points. How are we ever going to try and catch up? It's not going to be done with Reaver Scouts into Ballistas. You're going to need more powerful plays than that. That being said, the last 2 plays in Amarth's hands, very, very powerful, and no one ever really knows how big a Hubert is, so it could be basically anything.
Yeah, I mean, really the path to victory here for Amarth is just hoping that Mandrake gets discarded or something.
A little
just not looking
action.
too good otherwise.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a pretty big gap. Here comes the Hubert. Will it be enough? We need about, I don't know, 1 million?
It's not even enough on its own.
And here it comes, the final play of your quarterfinals. DrGrrrr finishing the reverse sweep. What a series, what a match. We'll be moving on to the semifinals. Great match we just saw there.
That was a great series, man. I mean, having the mental fortitude to come back from down 2 games, pull out a victory, that is really good.
Yeah, that's great. And the mental fortitude, like you said, because a lot of people will let that get to them. Oh, I'm down 0-2, I'm in this bad spot. And, negativity sort of breeds negativity. Just trucked right on through and took care of business there. Very nice.